I'm David Ainsworth, Head of Communications at the United Nations Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity. In today's Substa 26 Biodiversity Beat interview, we're talking to Meenal Tatpati, who's a Research and Policy Associate at Women for Biodiversity. Meenal, welcome.
Thank you, David.
So, one thing we'd like to find out was two questions we've got for you today. The first one is, so Women for Biodiversity, what are the agenda items that you're really focusing on at Substa and at SBI?
So, Women for Biodiversity works for gender issues, but we know that gender is a cross-cutting issue. So, specifically at Substa and SBI this time around, we are actually looking not just at Target 23, which has been adopted in the Global Biodiversity Framework, but we're also looking at gender across various issues, including marine and ocean biodiversity, biodiversity and health, which is a very, very important issue for women all over the world. So these are various topics that we're looking at.
Okay, so I want to come back to that question of mainstreaming gender across all the different areas. So we've got people discussing the monitoring and indicator framework. So presumably you're looking at this issue not just for 23. Tell us a little bit about how you're working on the question of monitoring and indicators for gender across the framework.
Yes. So we know that there is a target 23 for gender equality. We also know that the framework addresses the gender responsiveness of monitoring and implementation of the entire framework in section C. So what we are doing now is to figure out ways in which the indicator methodology can be developed. We already have the binary indicator for Target 23, and those are the SDG indicators. However, what we realized was that the decision 1511 of COP, which is the gender plan of action, which is a proposed component indicator, does not have an indicator methodology. So Women for Biodiversity, along with UNEP WCMC, has developed a metadata template for this so that the gender plan of action can be taken up by parties and implemented in a way that they deem suitable for them.
Okay. Now, is that template ready? Is there more development for it? Will it be deployed before COP?
It is ready, but we are also seeking comments from not just major stakeholders, but parties themselves, because it addresses the 18 actions in the gender plan of action that the parties have to uptake.
Okay.
So the methodology is ready for review by parties and major groups, and we are seeking comments till the 31st of May so that we can present it at COP16 in Colombia. Okay,
great. Well, we'll have to make sure we have a conversation about that back then.
Yes.
Is the data available? Because I remember as I started to follow this issue a number of years ago, one of the questions was, did we have disaggregated data that we can use? How is that situation? Are there any gaps you know that we need to work on in particular?
Yes, disaggregated data is definitely not available. The SDG indicators in the binary questions, they are in a way gathering some data, but especially for the mainstreaming of gender in biodiversity conservation, we do need data. And the gender plan of action and the metadata developed is going to help parties to gather that data so that they are more gender responsive in their policies, especially with relation to biodiversity conservation. So we are hoping that this methodology will gather the disaggregated data that is required so that parties can take steps towards gender responsiveness.
Well, that's great. So in that process, you'll be actually contributing, I imagine, across the field to possibly even things like UNCCD and UNFCCC.
We hope so. We hope so, because the data that is going to be gathered is going to be useful to cross-cut across the different conventions. And at the end of the day, the goal is biodiversity conservation, but we also know that women are major stakeholders in conservation of biodiversity, not just in conservation, but also use of biodiversity. So it is very important that this data gets where it is supposed to be, and that there is enough information available so that women can be mainstreamed into these conversations.
Great, excellent. Okay, well, let's promise to have a conversation at COP16 when you're presenting that, and we'll have a discussion.
Definitely.
Good
I would
stuff.
love to. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.